It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
The critically important fight to expose and halt the ongoing and accelerating global climate engineering insanity took a major leap forward, thanks to the courage of Tucker Carlson. Again, this week, my exchange with Tucker went live, went viral, and has since accumulated tens of millions of views on social media platforms. And that's the actual count. That's not an estimation. The numbers are still escalating quickly. Helping to circulate Tucker's post on X or YouTube would accelerate this process, and we need all the help we can get. I am so deeply grateful to Tucker for his unyielding courage to address what others won't touch. But more than anything else, I'm profoundly grateful for the indispensable help Tucker has just contributed to the all-important efforts of exposing and halting the assault from above, aka global weather, chemical, and biological warfare. The official denial of the climate engineering weather warfare issue raging in our skies is breaking down. The narrative of total deception that it's just jet exhaust or it's just condensation is completely unraveling. Any that are even slightly awake can see straight through those lies and the official denial. Countless criminally denying so-called experts must certainly be silently pondering how they will possibly be able to explain why or how they didn't know about or could not have known about or seen ever the climate engineering elephant raging in the skies above or seen its effects. The day of reckoning is coming. Wait and see. And I ask this question, will justifiably enraged populations hold the criminal accomplices to the climate engineering cover-up legally and morally accountable for their tyrannical behavior? Again, we'll soon enough find out. The proverbial pitchforks and torches moment. Again, Tucker Carlson has just significantly moved forward the fight to expose and stop climate engineering operations. You have my most sincere gratitude, Tucker. Some media coverage of my exchange with Tucker was partially objective. Here's one example, and numerous international sources did in fact cover the exchange. From London 24 News, quote, U.S. Army accused of secret local weather spraying operations. Again, I don't know where they got the word local from. I never implied local. I certainly have always made it clear this is a global operation, dumping 60 million tons of poisonous nanoparticles into the skies. London 24 News was loosely quoting me. What I actually cited in my exchange with Tucker was the following. Based on a multitude of precipitation tests in the state of Minnesota, working with scientists at the University of Minnesota, the amount of climate engineering elements present in the precipitation was quantified and projected globally. Based on these calculations, it appears that somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of climate engineering elements are being sprayed into our skies annually. Also, for the record, this figure is in the range of stated annual dispersion goals as stated by prominent climate engineering scientists. Just a coincidence? You decide. But not surprisingly, other media sources were far less objective in their coverage. Their job? To try to smear anyone who dares talk about this issue. From Slate.com, this headline, commercial airlines are spewing chemicals aimed at turning the weather into a superweapon, says Tucker Carlson's latest guest, aka me. The report then states, quote, Carlson's chemtrails era was always on its way, and now it's here. Let's stop there. Slate.com didn't mention the geoengineering term in the title. They don't want readers to find credible information on a critically important subject that the controllers are absolutely desperate to hide and deny in plain sight till the moment of impact at full velocity, and that moment draws so very near. The equation we face is so incredibly non-linear, and this intentional derailing of the planet's life support systems is the greatest threat we face, short of nuclear cataclysm. And that's saying a lot, because the human race has, as a whole, brutalized this planet from countless directions. But again, the intentional manipulation of the planet's remaining life support systems. Certain equation for near-term planetary omnicide. Next, from the Huffington Post, power structure bought and paid for criminal disinformation source. Desperate and pathetically transparent personal attacks. Here's the headline. Critics rip Tucker Carlson's latest conspiracy talk, quote, insulting to even basic intelligence, end quote. That author, Ben Blanchett, B-L-A-N-C-H-E-T. Let's stop there for a moment. Mr. Ben Blanchett, for the record, anyone with even basic intelligence, a sense of functional reason, logic, and functional eyesight can inarguably see the ongoing jet-spraying atrocities in our skies with mountains of documentation and film footage to conclusively confirm the climate engineering assault. But none of that matters for HuffPost's Ben Blanchett. He continues with this, quote, believers in the debunked theory have linked condensation trails left behind by aircraft to some form of chemical or biological agent used to control the weather. Stop there for a moment and consider how baseless this denial is from a so-called journalist that's simply a mouthpiece for the power structure. Historical record of these operations going back many decades. We have proven, geoengineeringwatch.org has proven what these aircraft are emitting on film and on the record with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Flying Lab, top scientists in it, processed that at one of the world's most renowned laboratories, found exactly what we knew we'd find, starting with climate engineering elements. No, it's not condensation. No, it's not jet exhaust. It's a sprayed dispersion. We have photographs of the retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons. And of course, the disinformation trolls continue to claim, oh, that's just a fuel drain or an oil drain. We drain it right into the exhaust jet stream so we can blow the plane up. If you believe that kind of narrative, then you probably believe that steel structure high-rise buildings fall down from furniture burning in the first floor, or that mainstream medical concoctions are, quote, safe and effective when they're anything but. Bottom line is, of course these operations are ongoing. The entire global climate science community is calling for exactly what we see in our skies to be immediately deployed. We have the U.S. military top brass stating for decades that the collapsing climate is the greatest national security threat of all. Do we really think they're not doing this? And is the public completely dead from the neck up? Our skies look so bad that it's mind-numbing that people don't pull over on the highway, get out of their car, and look up and try to figure out what in the hell's going on over their heads. Planetary Truman Show, orbiting asylum, needs to change or none of us are going to be here much longer. Blanchett then states, the episode sees Carlson interviewing Dane Wigington, who once pushed a pseudoscientific theory that California's drought between 2011 and 2017 was the government's doing. Pseudoscientific, Ben? Really? Because you say so? My question for you, Ben, do you find it interesting that everything I've stated for the last 16 years at geoengineeringwatch.org as a climate engineering consequence that would be inevitable if these weather warfare operations were allowed to continue has in fact come to pass? Do verifiable facts matter to you, Ben, or just your power structure-backed paycheck and pension? And about the source for Ben's statement that anyone who thinks climate engineering is occurring is, quote, insulting to basic intelligence, end quote, that's one Justin Hart. Justin Hart was quoted in the report as saying this also, I spent a decade in aviation. I can tell you the chemtrail accusations are insulting to even basic intelligence. Well, there you have it. Because Justin Hart says so, it must be so, right? Justin, question for you. Because the vast majority of the medical industrial complex so-called experts say that their injectable concoctions are, quote, safe and effective, does that make it so? Another question. Are Ben and Justin just towing the line for the controllers they serve, or are they in fact petrified of their own looming mortality on a rapidly dying planet with weather warfare raging overhead? Does their own deeply rooted fear of death cause their willful blindness and lashing out at any who dare to challenge their denial? Maybe you should ask them for yourself. Maybe include a link to the dimming. But make those kinds of messages peaceful and professional. That's how we move this fight forward. Continuing on, AOL put up the exact same pathetically desperate disinformation attempt as HuffPost. Cowards. All of them cowards, but the day of exposure is coming fast. The climate engineering onslaught can't be put in the rearview mirror as so many other causes have been by the general population. The total decimation being inflicted on our dying planet and human health from geoengineering grows worse by the day, harder to hide by the day. The gravity and immediacy of the geoengineering weather warfare threat cannot be overstated. If allowed to continue, extremely near-term planetary omnicide is a mathematical and statistical certainty. And again, to those that roll their eyes and scoff at such a conclusion, that's based completely and totally on frontline data. Those that are still neck deep in denial, like Ben and Justin, enjoy it while you can. Heads will soon be ripped from the sand due to unfolding realities, like it or not. Let's cap all of that off with this. From cleantechnica.com, Royal Society report, geoengineering is a really bad idea. Yes. Definitely yes, a really bad idea, except that's not actually accurate, is it? Geoengineering isn't just a dangerous proposal. It isn't just a really bad idea. It's an ongoing 80-year-long cataclysm that's getting worse by the day. How much time do we have left on the current course? We'll know soon enough. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, the End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare in our skies. Quick footnote for those that truly want to help sound the alarm, to wake those around them in their circles, their family, their friends. Very effective climate engineering awareness raising materials are available on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Full color, extremely high quality printed materials, which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts. We have hoodies, new sizes, new colors. Again, be a walking billboard. Start a conversation. We're running out of time. Moving on. Next, how many took notice of the instant engineered winter weather in the U.S.? From NBC News. Record low temperatures shock the southeast U.S. while snowfall blankets parts of the northeast. Wow, that's exactly the kind of headline the controllers and the climate engineers want to create. From the report, for much of the southeast on Tuesday, there was an abrupt transition into wintry temperatures after reaching well into the 70s and 80s in recent days, before the flash cool down. Yes, a quote, abrupt transition. That's putting it lightly. Another term so many matrix meteorologists use is, quote, rain changing over to snow. And that's exactly what takes place when climate engineering jets are spewing out payloads of patented chemical ice nucleating elements into cloud moisture from above. Endothermic, energy-absorbing elements that chemically creates a cold, dense layer of air that descends to the surface, along with various forms of chemically frozen material when conditions are right. And enough chemical nucleating material is utilized in these operations. And again, no, we're not guessing. We've tested this frozen material again and again. Surfactants, the long list of heavy metals, polymer fibers. This isn't naturally nucleated snow. It's Frankensnow. Don't eat any of it. And I don't say that in jest. It's killing everything. And this material often is far colder to the touch than any naturally nucleated snow. I grew up in the San Gabriel Mountains, at the base of the mountains, in the mountains all the time. And I remember the first time I encountered this chemically nucleated Frankensnow, I knew something was wrong. It was flash burning my fingers. That's not normal. It's not natural. And this material also sublimates, which means much of it in the melting process going way into spring when people talk about seeing snow that has no runoff, because a chemically nucleated element, again, sublimates. Dry ice is the extreme form. There's no runoff. It converts from a solid to a gas, bypassing the liquid phase. And there is, of course, runoff of this nucleated material, but much less than normal. So no matter what the snowpack is, the runoff is never enough anymore, is it? And it's toxic anyway. And in spite of the climate engineering elements that show up in every single rain test and the chemical ice nucleating elements that show up in frozen precipitations, we still have those in the disinformation community trying to pretend, oh, it's just jet exhaust, it's just condensation that happens to have all these climate engineering elements in it. Ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Those narratives are unraveling rapidly. From baseball and softball size hail to rice grain-like frozen grains to styrofoam-like balls to cotton ball-like so-called snowflakes, welcome to engineered winter weather mayhem, the temporary and toxic kind. And of course, the Matrix media talking heads, so-called weather experts, clearly have their instructions to hype up and sensationalize the engineered winter events, constantly repeating statements of how cold and wintry everything is, showing wind chill temperatures as if that's the ambient temperature, trying to deceive people in any way they can, never mind the record warmth just before the engineered cool down and immediately after. On that note, same theme from weather.com. Weather whiplash from deep freeze to record warmth. In headline. There it is. Exactly as I've warned about for over 2 decades, 16 years of which is with geoengineeringwatch.org. The Weather Channel report then states temperatures will quickly rise after freezing temperatures impact the deep south. They continue. In several locations, temperatures will go from record cold to record warm in a matter of a few days, 2 days to be exact. Highs across the south will be in the 70s and 80s by Thursday, and the big freeze was on Tuesday. The latest on this weather whiplash, says the Weather Channel. Climate engineering cover-up writers. That's exactly who they are. How do these people live with themselves? How do they face themselves in the mirror? I truly don't know. Let's add this from Fox News. More of the same. Here's the headline. Weather whiplash. Record high temperatures expected for 230 million Americans after the early week polar plunge. From the Fox report. After a pre-winter Arctic blast set more than 70 record low temperatures across the eastern U.S. earlier this week, a major warm-up is on the way, with parts of the heartland expected to surpass the 80-degree mark by the weekend. In last weekend's broadcast, this is exactly the scenario I said was coming. Exactly. Because it's the scheduled weather, and here it is. Let's stop there again. This important reminder of the ways in which the unfolding planetary meltdown is being masked by those in control. When the weather terrorists engineer a massive chemical cool down, a winter weather scenario, which is actually a very shallow layer of chemically cooled air on the surface, they record record cold temperatures in as many locations as possible so that they can then sensationalize all the record cold readings. On the other hand, once the chemical cold dissipates and the rapid rebound of record warmth returns, so-called official sources only record a small fraction of the total available record warm readings, even when the record warm scenario covers expanses of the country many times larger than the chemically cooled event did. The money printers control almost all of it for the moment. Militaries, most government so-called elected officials, and most media, which of course allows them to craft the narrative, to decide which records they keep, which ones they don't monitor, and to demonize any that dare to dispute it. Go Tucker. Again, thank you. If you haven't seen our exchange, please take a look on Tucker's website, on X. Please help us to share that, and please thank Tucker for his courage. So again, late this week, record warm-up over vast swaths of the country, which, as just formerly mentioned, followed the record chemical cool-down that was carried out, which happened on the heels of previous record warmth. Summary: engineered roller coaster conditions. Moving on, the following is the next round of scheduled weather from Severe Weather Europe. This headline, Polar Vortex Watch, a stratospheric warming event is about to start with cold weather and snow to follow behind. Again, weather whiplash, temperature whiplash, none of it nature. The report says a significant disruption of the polar vortex is about to start. This is atmospheric pressure zone manipulation, ionosphere heaters. None of this is nature. None of it. They say due to an unusually early sudden stratospheric warming event, the forecasts show a collapse of the polar circulation in the second half of the month, with cold weather and snow to follow across the United States and Canada, but with less clear impacts over Europe for now. They just haven't made that script up yet. By the way, who does the scripts? Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Neck deep in climate engineering, everything, operations and patents. They do the weather modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA, the nation's weathermen. Why would that be? Because they need the script to match the operations in the field, of course. I'll stop there for a moment. An important mention, points to ponder for those that aren't yet alarmed by what can so clearly be seen taking place in our skies, and are not yet alarmed by the fact that our miraculous yet fragile, life-providing atmosphere is being used for a physics lab and a battlefield. A deep sense of alarm is reasonable, rational, and completely justified. Whenever I hear the term climate alarmism, it's a given that the source of the term is either completely clueless or motivated to lie for a long list of potential reasons. Again, starting with lacking the courage to even face the truth, let alone deal with it, especially when it concerns their own near-term mortality. Again, even for those that insist on pretending that nothing humans do or have done has harmed the planet, except climate engineering, they say, the narrative is incorrect, but let's humor them for the moment. The planet is still very much broken. Its life support systems, and indeed the entire web of life, is virtually imploding, collapsing. We are circling the drain now. That isn't an opinion. It's a verifiable fact based on not disputed statistics. Ocean collapse, forestry collapse, crop collapse, insect collapse, wildlife collapse, all of it is happening simultaneously. It's called cascading collapse. There's a term for that. Fits, doesn't it? And on the other side of the world, the same weather and temperature whiplash scenarios are playing out. What a surprise. Climate engineering in the land down under. From ABC, Australia. This headline, Australia's spring weather swings from hot to cold and back again in battle of the seasons. The report says the wrath of spring's dramatic twists and turns, with hot fire-prone days swinging to rain and giant hail. Many parts of Australia are experiencing these conditions, as are places all over the world, because climate engineering is global. And for those that report these official excuses for what's taking place, blaming it on nature, that's absolutely criminal. Absolutely criminal. The public needs to take notice of who's saying what. And once this is out in the open, those, again, that have participated in this criminal cover-up should be held legally and morally accountable. Nuremberg trials for those that participated in programs of planetary omnicide. That's what this is. And shouldn't the guilty parties include those that pretend to be fighting climate engineering, but in fact are doing everything they can to deny it? Went over that in last week's broadcast as well. How are they not culpable in this twisted mess of deception and tyranny? That's what it is. In the meantime, every single day we're being sprayed like lab rats. Sprayed. Particulate dispersions, that's what these are. From space.com, let's add this. Scientists find a surprising twist in Earth's magnetic field. This is more of, gee, we didn't know. We didn't have a clue. The report says, simulations and satellite data reveal that Earth's magnetic field is more complex than scientists had thought. Just like every week I report on science articles that say it's way worse than we thought, and that's exactly what I've stated from day one at geoengineeringwatch.org. The climate collapse isn't as bad as we're being told. It's way worse than we're being told. I've said that over and over and over. They continue. Scientists studying Earth's magnetic field have discovered that its electric heartbeat flows in the opposite direction from what long-standing models predicted. In other words, from what they thought. They had it completely backwards. Completely. You think they know what they're doing when they're climate engineering? They know how to use weather as a weapon, but they don't seem to care about the consequences, do they? They never have. And so many times I still hear it. Can't be happening. They wouldn't do this to themselves. Yeah, they already have. How many examples, how many times have I given? Just Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl, the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere that they thought could collapse the entire atmosphere. They did it anyway. And right now, the human race as a whole is full throttle till impact. Drill, baby, drill. Loot, plunder, pillage, pollute and poison until nothing is left. That's exactly the course we're on. For those that aren't aware, the COP Global Climate Conference is underway in Brazil. By the way, they cut down something like 100,000 trees to build a special access road for this conference. Is that not the epitome of hypocrisy? And how many so-called environmentally caring individuals, diplomats, the Al Gores, the Gavin Newsoms, how many will show up on their private jets that burn a tremendous amount of fuel? Total criminal hypocrisy. Nevertheless, a climate conference in Brazil and the climate conferences in which the attendee clowns again, including Governor Gavin Newsom, pretend that they're going to curb atmospheric pollution when, in fact, as I have made mention of so many times over so many years, what's actually taking place behind closed doors at these conferences is the pressuring of nations to continue actively or passively participating in the climate engineering insanity. I'll get to headlines on the conference in a moment, but first consider that the massive engineered cooldown in the U.S. this week was to fulfill numerous agendas, one of which was to be a demonstration of climate engineering's capabilities for the COP climate conference attendees. Because on the global departure from normal surface temperature maps, guess where the only significantly below normal temperatures were in the entire world? Guess. Eastern half of the U.S. lower 48. Just a coincidence? Just nature? No. Is it just a coincidence that at a number of previous COP conferences, record cold temperatures were recorded at the conference, even though surrounding regions at that time were all above normal temperatures also? No, not coincidence, not nature. With all that in mind, a few more headline samples of engineered winter from this week that are so sought after by the controllers and the climate engineers to convince other countries and leaders of other countries to just double down on climate engineering until the planet is completely dead. Welcome to processes of patented chemical ice nucleation. Search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more. Here's a headline from Secret Atlanta. It's snowing in Atlanta right now. That's this week. Think about that. While it was 95 in LA, here's what we know about today's winter weather, the report says. It continues, if you think you just saw snow flurries outside today in Atlanta, no, it's not your mind playing tricks on you. Atlanta has a freeze warning for this evening. And tomorrow morning, this is early in the week, just after the record high temperatures and just prior to the next round of record high temperatures. It's just totally insane. It says Atlanta under freeze warning with temperatures as low as 15 degrees. 15? Again, if you go up a couple hundred feet, you might jump 15, 20 degrees higher in temperature. That's wrong. That's because that cold air settles to the surface. Go into your market with the large open freezer, totally open on top. Everything inside that open freezer is frozen because the cold air sits in that basin. It's the same thing here. Again, this is becoming an ever more desperate attempt to confuse and divide the population as to the true state of damage already done to the climate and the planet, while yet inflicting even more damage in the process. So the engineered flash freeze record cold in the U.S., again, an attempt of the weather terrorists to demonstrate their godlike powers, except in reality, the ability of the climate engineers to create highly toxic, chemically induced surface flash freezes isn't ultimately a godlike power at all, is it? God creates. The geoengineers and the criminally insane controllers they serve only destroy. Next, from the Washington Post, meteorologists in Chicago warned of rare snow spouts. What are they? We have snow spouts, we have thunder snow, we have the warm side of the quote winter storm and the cold side of the quote winter storm. It's completely absurd, a circus of insanity. What will it take to wake people up? From weather.com, Chicago and northern India pounded by thunder, lake effect snow on the record warm Great Lakes, by the way. Flurries as far south as Atlanta, just went over that. Chicagoland's first snow of the season was a blast of wind-driven lake effect snow. They need the surface zonal winds. It's like an atmospheric snowblower. I covered this in last week's broadcast, exactly this, that they would turn the Great Lakes and the record warm water there with strong surface zonal winds into what amounts to an atmospheric snowblower with chemical ice nucleating elements mixed into the water being picked up off those lakes as that wind blows across them. It says that wasn't the only place that saw its first snow of the season. It even piled up in the southern Appalachians. But on the Great Lakes lake effect snow, sometimes you could walk a block and be out of the snow. That's how localized these events are. But it creates headlines. They take pictures of only where the snow is piling up, and they sensationalize it. Another headline, same theme from Fox News. Powerful band of lake effect snow blasts downtown Chicago amid shifting winds. Lest I forget to mention the super slick surfactant-soaked chemically nucleated snow and ice. This material is so much more slippery than naturally nucleated snow or ice that people that thought they knew how to drive on frozen material now don't, because it's a completely different substance. That's the fact of the matter. Surfactants are used in the particulate dispersions, part of the patents They're used to keep these particulates from coagulating together into bigger particles, which would descend from the atmosphere faster. And again, those that are in charge of these programs care not for the consequences. Not at all. They know collapse is coming. They don't care what they do at this point. And they know they can demo, for example, steel structure high-rise buildings in front of the entire world. Clearly demolitions. Building 7 not hit by anything. Nothing. Some furniture burning on the first floor. Most people don't even know a third building collapsed on 9/11. How could they possibly carry that out in front of the whole world? And when they can do that, they know they can do anything they want. They can paint the skies any way they want. And no one, almost no one will care. But that's changing. That's changing because you can't hide from the damage being done, where the food shelves emptying out, oceans dying, fisheries dying, UV radiation off the scale because climate engineering is destroying the ozone layer. Anybody who's in any sense in touch with their natural senses knows the sun is scorching their skin. We see cattle in the middle of winter hiding under trees on a sunny day because the UV is too intense for them. What does it take to wake people up? From the AlaskaBeacon.com, Alaska's coastal communities deserve a say in geoengineering of our oceans. Different type of geoengineering. There's so many layers of insanity here. The SRM elements being sprayed over the ocean settle to the surface. They become ocean fertilization elements. That's another aspect of climate engineering, forcing the oceans to take up extra carbon, acidifying the oceans, helping to deoxygenate them or kill them, in other words. It's one layer of insanity on top of another and another. Let's hope the Alaskan people start to sound the alarm about climate engineering as well. From newsobserver.com. In fact, send them a link to the dimming. That would help. Contact the Alaska Beacon and ask them to watch and then explain the dimming. From newsobserver.com, as the ocean claims Outer Banks houses, it's time to retreat from our beaches. If you haven't seen the houses that are collapsing on the Outer Banks of Carolina, that is just the beginning. Much, much more is coming. Wait and see. You can't stop this. You can't just put the brakes on after you've crashed through the guardrail and are sailing through the air. It doesn't work anymore. But the climate scientists, again, they behave as if, okay, we're sailing through the air, so we should probably put a new set of brakes on the car now. No, that's not how it works. The absurd proposals from the climate science community to fill space with mirrors or to put Brazil-sized balloons in space to block the sun, I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. A 5-year-old with a crayon could come up with better solutions. From Sustainability Times, Antarctica's collapse warns of unstoppable changes, raising concerns for coastal cities and global ecosystems. This is an ongoing story, different report, similar ones in previous weeks. Antarctica's ice is melting at an alarming rate, threatening global sea levels and ecosystems as scientists urgently call for drastic carbon emissions reductions. Let's start with stopping climate engineering. How about that? I'm not saying that totally changing atmospheric chemistry with massive carbon emissions, we pumped it up over 50% in the geologic blink of an eye. That's a problem, big problem. That's triggered methane release, bigger problem still. All of that is nails in our collective coffins, but let's focus on exposing and stopping climate engineering first. We should all agree on that, no matter what your perspective is on the climate. If we can do that, we will have taken a quantum leap in the right direction. Then we can focus on the rest. The report says the changes in Antarctica's ice, oceans, and ecosystems could have, could, may, might, dire consequences globally. There's no could, may, might. Again, we're back to, if you take the kamikaze leap from the top of a 100-story building, you could, may, might have some problems. They say the implications of collapsing WAIS, that's the West Antarctic ice sheet, are profound. Coastal cities around the globe, from New York to Shanghai, could, may, might face increased flooding. It's happening right now. Okay, let's call it what it is. It's not off somewhere in the future. Next, let's add this. Why have the world's glaciologists missed the coming rapid collapse of ice in Antarctica? Why have they missed it? How is it that I knew? How is it that I've known for the entire length that I've been at geoengineeringwatch.org and even before that, and they didn't know? How is that possible? Two potentials here. These people are so-called experts are either criminally ignorant of the very field of study in which we're told they're experts, or they're lying for a paycheck and a pension. Take your pick. Here's a final excerpt from the report in the headline I just read. It says, why is no one at the COP conference talking about the end of coastal civilization? Because they're talking about climate engineering, pretending that's going to save us. How's that going so far after 80 years of it? From MSN, why Antarctica's doomsday glacier could reshape global coastlines. Again, more of the same, could, may, might. From Science Daily, Antarctica's collapse may, could, may, might, again, be unstoppable. It is unstoppable. Again, sailing through the air, through the guardrail, can't put the brakes on now. We're never going to know the planet we've known before, but we could yet save some of the planet's life support systems That's worth fighting for. And saving any of those systems starts with stopping climate engineering. That's our first leap in the right direction. I have a footnote, coast to coast above normal precipitation on the NOAA scheduled weather maps. That's what they are. Never seen that before. Literally coast to coast, every state. What's going on here? It's because they're scattering the moisture as widely as possible, trying to create SRM canopy, which traps more heat than it deflects. They're chemically nucleating that moisture. That dries most of it up. Again, the last two atmospheric rivers coming into the west, in my location, we were told we'd get 5 or 6 inches of rain in the first atmospheric river. It was heavily hyped. We got 1 inch. And the most recent one, 5 to 6 inches predicted, we got a ½ inch. They're drying up that moisture to create the chemical cool downs, migrate that moisture further east. They are losing whatever control they thought they had. Climate system is literally coming apart at the seams. Wheels are coming off the bus. Better buckle up. From Fox News, more problems in the atmosphere. This headline, Northern Lights visible in St. Louis area. What we know. From newsleader.com, missed the Northern Lights last night, ? NOAA says they may be visible November 12th. NOAA would know because they know what happens with ionosphere heaters like HARP, don't they? Here's an idea. Let's ask AI about ionosphere heaters and what they're capable of. Here's AI's answer. Yes, ionosphere heaters can create artificial auroras by using high-frequency radio waves to excite gases in the atmosphere, causing them to emit a glow similar to a natural aurora. AI continues, these experiments, such as those conducted by the HARP facility, use ground-based transmitters to heat the ionosphere, which creates luminous spots or artificial auroras. Scientists study these artificial lights to learn more about the processes that create natural auroras and other ionospheric phenomenon. Great. Let's use the atmosphere for a physics lab and a battleground. What a great idea. For those that haven't connected this puzzle piece, the oil industry, carbon fuel industry is neck deep in climate engineering everything as well. It suits their purpose. With that in mind, here's a reminder of a past report from UK Guardian. Oil industry has sought to block state backing for green tech since the 1960s. That's going back a very long way. Research shows industry lobbying against support for solar panels, electric cars. Not that I like electric cars, any of that, but the bottom line is the oil industry is absolutely embracing climate engineering because it suits their purpose. When you can engineer the big flash cool down in the States, it confuses and divides the population on the two-state of damage already done to the climate, so let's drill, baby, drill, and do more damage on top of climate engineering, damage from every conceivable direction, while we hurtle toward near-term omnicide. That's what's going on here. So again, big oil backing climate engineering behind the scenes. With that in mind, here's more headlines about the COP30. All of these dots connect. Keep that in mind. Governments and billionaires retreat ahead of COP30 climate talks. Worldwide, every other week seems to bring a new climate-related crisis. Increasingly, the responses seem to be dulled acceptance. Question, acceptance of what? Climate engineering and abrupt climate collapse? Because both are exactly what we collectively face. Let's add this from Reuters News. Brazil's COP30 climate summit opens with a plea for countries to get along. Sounds like the Rodney King line, doesn't it? It's going to work just about as well, too. The world's biggest historical emitter of greenhouse gases, that's the United States, of course, opted to skip the summit. U.S. President Trump falsely asserts that climate change is a hoax. Remember that last statement. In the coming weeks and months, as the unfolding abrupt climate collapse accelerates, ask yourself, how could the president be so clueless? And why did he do nothing but gut and delete data sources that were essential to exposing climate engineering? Because that's exactly what has happened. First, the current comic book character in the White House is on the end of money printer strings, just like previous administrations, regardless of their political stripe, going all the way back to JFK. Second, it increasingly appears that the current occupant of the White House may soon be thrown off the bus. If so, he'll certainly be replaced by another puppet. Political stripes don't matter in this equation. They never have. The inmates have long since taken control of the orbiting asylum. What comes next? How many really want to know the answer to that question? You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 536. Never missed a week. November 15th, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, GEOengineeringwatch.org. For those that are new to this site, That's how you find us. Please join us in this battle. We're the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations, known as geoengineering. Global Alert News, aired on numerous AM and FM stations around the country. Any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast. In order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. It's very easy for them because we don't advertise. Super easy for them to put this show up on their station. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast for free, of course. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities. The more this film is circulated, the more spot fires of awareness that will be started. Best way to share, circulate the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience. About reaching those that still aren't looking up. Again, start the conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on our homepage. Our only goal, give activists what they need to move the fight forward. Again, very high-quality printed materials. If our booklet doesn't wake somebody up, don't bother. Walk on. They're not going to wake up. If you share these shocking images, people tend to share them with others. You start a spot fire of awareness. Pictures worth 1,000 words. We pass these printed materials on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We have, again, Geoengineering Watch hoodies, shirts, different colors now, photos on our homepage. Those are good conversation starters as well. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers. All of these are effective tools to start the conversation on the climate engineering issue. Reaching a critical mass. Only way forward in this fight. Nothing else is going to get us where we need to be. Once we reach a critical mass and those participating and those in positions of power that can help, when they understand they're going down on the ship with the rest of us, that's when they may decide to do the right thing. We need to get there as quickly as we can. If we can expose it, we have a chance of stopping it from the inside out. To all those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, my deepest gratitude to you, forever. We march together in this battle for everything that matters, literally. Before getting to some headlines on our food supplies, how contaminated they are, and how they're declining rapidly, this footnote, it's important. This is a data center update. This is a piece of the puzzle from Medium.com. The unsustainable growth of data centers, extremely unsustainable, like the rest of militarized, industrialized, so-called society. The report says AI companies promised a revolutionary future. They've delivered an environmental crisis instead. Absolutely true. Just one more massive weight on the scale that is rapidly tipping toward total collapse. On that note, about our food from phys.org. Climate intervention may lower protein content in major global food crops. Guess what? It's going to also contaminate everything with nanoparticle climate engineering elements, starting with aluminum, which is toxic to all life forms. It's killing soil microbiome, killing root systems, killing bees, destroying the ozone layer, which is killing plankton. None of this ever mentioned by the so-called experts that we're taught from birth to blindly trust. But wait, aluminum-resistant GMO crops will save us from ourselves, right? Not so much. First, the resistant part means that organism, instead of shutting down when it detects the aluminum contamination, it just uptakes it, which means we uptake it. How is that helping anything? And GMO crops grow, if they grow twice as fast, they have half the nutrition. So you have to ingest more calories to get the same nutrition, aside from the aluminum part. Makes it worse for you, not better. These are all the parts they don't tell you when they're pushing their tech as a saving element when it's literally the final nails in our collective coffins. How many have seen recent online ads claiming honey can cure Alzheimer's? Question, if true, was that before honey became contaminated with climate engineering heavy metal fallout, starting with aluminum? From honeybee sweet, heavy metal accumulation in honey. How about that? How could it not be in the honey? We have peer-reviewed study to prove bees are dying of massive aluminum contamination from gathering pollen because it's in the pollen, because it's in everything. The bees have symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being because they're packed with aluminum. They can't even find their way back to the hive. Again, I ask, how long till we can't find our way back to our homes? Because we, all of us, each of us, is inhaling these particles with every single breath we take. Peer-reviewed science study proven. How is that not an immediate fight for life? It is, of course. From foreignaffairs.com, a hidden hunger crisis is destabilizing the world. For how many years have I said this was unfolding? And why do sources like this begin to admit it? Because they can't hide it any longer. That's why. Report says how food insecurity provokes violence and weakens even wealthy states. Yes, Mad Max times 8.3 billion. For a taste of the trajectory that we're collectively on, search and view the film titled The Road. I've recommended that before. That will give you a sample of what's coming. In fact, The Road is probably closer to a Disneyland vacation compared to what's coming. From WFP.org, World Food Program, new report warns of shrinking window to prevent millions more people facing acute food insecurity. Let's correct that headline. It's not millions more. It's soon to be billions more. An update on mosquitoes. A reminder of last week's headline on the new disease-carrying mosquitoes that are spreading in the U.S. Now Iceland has a dose. Also from Earth.com, scientists confirm that mosquitoes are now living in Iceland for the first time ever. It's coming. Everything is changing. The shifts that we're experiencing right now are happening at hundreds of times faster than any previous earth-changing events. This is not natural in any way, shape, or form. Climate engineering, again, fueling the overall fire, but not the only problem. We've been horrible stewards of this planet, but we must start with the biggest priority problem, and that's climate engineering. Moving on, how many times have I made mention of the fact that we're losing the air conditioners of the planet, aka the polar regions? This is new from AlaskaClimateSubstack.com. Arctic-wide, the lands and seas north of 60 degrees. Average temperature in October, highest on record. How about that? So much for global cooling and the coming ice age. Ridiculous narrative. From thepeoplesgazette.com, dangerous nighttime heat rising globally. This is, again, a very bad harbinger. Nighttime temperatures rising twice as fast as daytime temperatures. It means heat's not escaping back into the atmosphere. Current thermal energy buildup on the planet, somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 Hiroshima bombs per second. The heat contained in 13 Hiroshima bombs per second. That's how fast the planet's warming. Much of that has gone into the oceans. Oceans are now superheating. Again, as I mentioned, I think in last week's broadcast, we have some of the waterways in the Amazon at 104 degrees, killing everything, including the pink dolphins that once existed there. No media coverage of that here. Nothing. To be clear, climate engineering operations, which again include ionosphere heaters, like HARP in Alaska, which can create high-pressure heat domes. Climate engineering can create artificially high temperatures and artificially low temperatures, both. But overall, planetary warming is certainly the inarguable trend. Climate engineering making it worse, not better. Also, the drought deluge scenario. Here's an update on that front. From the UK Guardian, England facing drastic measures due to extreme drought. Water companies and governments are drawing up emergency plans for a drought next year. You can't adapt to this. When climate engineering totally derails the hydrological cycle, all bets are off at that point. From AA.com, news from the Middle East, Iran's president warns Tehran may have to be evacuated. This is an ongoing story. Amid worsening water crisis, Iran, the victim of Western power weather warfare for decades. Again, I ask, I wonder why they don't like us. The same thing's being done to U.S. residents right now. Those in power don't care any more about us than they do the Iranians or anyone else in the world. We are a liability to them, a rapidly increasing liability, especially Americans, because many Americans are armed. Bigger liability than anyone. That's why weather warfare is being waged on us as well. From 24news.com, Israel fills the Sea of Galilee with desalinated water. Dumb idea. Extremely energy intensive. Completely unsustainable, and huge amount of toxic waste created from desalination. Most people don't know that. They think it's some panacea. No, anything but. And the deluge part, UPI.com, record rains in Buenos Aires leave 12 million acres of farmland underwater. Farmland's being hit especially hard. Flash drought, flash freeze, flash flood. Target the food supply, destabilize populations, control the masses. That's what it comes down to. Changing gears for a moment, here's a quick update on Hurricane Melissa. Listen to this. With an extraordinary peak flash rate of 699 flashes per minute, that's lightning, just prior to landfall in Jamaica, Hurricane Melissa probably set the record for the most prolific inner core lightning outbreak ever recorded in an Atlantic hurricane. How many times have I talked about the frequency transmissions that are utilized in the steering of these storms? It looked like a strobe light was going off in the core of that storm. You have to see it to believe it. Almost out of time on this 1 hour on-air broadcast. It seems the government shutdown theater has come to an end. Whole government shutdown, ultimately completely orchestrated mass distraction. The script must always be made ever more compelling and outrageous in order to more fully occupy the attention of all demographics, so that they are far less likely to take notice of or even to comprehend the oncoming train of total collapse. Almost none yet understand the immediacy and totality of what's unfolding. Psychological defense mechanisms are hardwired into the brains of most. Let's ponder this headline from Collapse Chronicle. In-stage necro-capitalism fumbling towards the exit. How true it is. Societies were formed not to evolve, but to obey. And what we tend to affectionately call social evolution was merely the aftermath of succumbing and then adapting to ever-changing forms of oppression and tyranny. Yes, sadly, it's true. Stockholm Syndrome on steroids. Question, are far too many in the ranks of the human race, much like farm animals on growth hormones? Humans can easily live the entirety of their existence sustained by the distractions of a techno-feudalistic society, never for a minute raising their heads to notice that they, in fact, are inhabitants of an enclosure, and that there's an actual door somewhere, a secret exit to a place where the farm owners have zero jurisdiction, where people are equal and parasitic psychopaths are unable to assert their tyranny. But the farm's hormones, antibiotics, and sedatives are always too strong to overcome for far too many. After all, that's what they're for, aren't they? To make sure you never want to leave? And as we convince ourselves that it makes sense to stay, society does its own part, deifying the oligarchs themselves, presenting them as providers, economic stimulators, and innovators, rather than parasites in search of their next food source. Like a rapidly aging pensioner, the world in 2025 bears little resemblance to what it was in 2020 and is already a zombie version of what it was in the decades prior to that. With global debt surpassing something in the range of $300 trillion, with food and shelter becoming permanently unaffordable worldwide, we're well within the beginning of the end. In fact, we are very, very far into the curve of the collapse of industrialized, militarized, so-called civilization. Many, many factors are far past the breaking point right now. On any given day, the paradigm we have known could shatter, could capsize. If the human race remains on the current course, it can only get worse from here on out, starting with rapidly unfolding and accelerating climate collapse, with climate engineering operations further fueling the fire, along with global ecological collapse. Both are intensifying exponentially. If there was ever any evidence that concentrated power will always seek to exploit, it's the fact that people have been in conflict with their leaders since the formation of organized societies. And despite this, only rarely do farm-bred humans revolt. If the intentional kleptocracy in charge of this economy knew that they could be held accountable, they wouldn't be this ruthless. They do what they do because they expect their actions to be tolerated. And our culture venerates and deifies morally bankrupt tyrants and serial parasites as they leave a trail of victims behind them. On the subject of innocent victims and the soulless tyrants that are responsible for their fate, the following story, which I've been following for some time, absolutely breaks my heart. It is deeply disturbing that far too many in the ranks of the human race are willing to carry out any atrocity, so long as someone they believe to be an authority authorizes it, as the Milgram experiments shockingly proved. At the end of this journey, it has always been my chosen belief that we will answer for our actions. those who carried out the following atrocity on any and every level deserve to answer for what they have done. From numerous sources, slaughter of healthy, defenseless ostriches. A farm's final stand, the day the ostriches fell. From the report, a family-owned ostrich farm in British Columbia has been destroyed after government agents shot and killed its entire flock of over 300 birds. The cull was ordered by the Canadian Food Inspection Agencies due to a bird flu outbreak detected a year ago, despite the fact that the farm owners insisted the surviving birds were healthy. They had been tested. The Canadian officials conducted the cull using professional marksmen, blocking airspace, and shielding the area with tarps to prevent observation and recording. For the record, any who still cling to the belief that those in power care any more about us than they do the ostriches or the innocent civilians being slaughtered in faraway lands, time to wake up. Time to look up. How many have long since turned two blind eyes to the controller-orchestrated killing fields all over the world? There is now nowhere to hide. Taken as a whole, the human race has and is behaving as a species which has absolutely no interest or concern in regard to surviving itself. We must change course, and that effort will take all of us. Make your life matter to the whole while you still can. This is where true solace and true serenity exist. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Make your voice heard, make every single day count. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org.